We're now ready to make an actual assertion inside of our it block to make sure that Joe is successfully being saved. I want to mention really quick that I know that we're kind of focusing on a lot of Mocha topics so far, how the testing framework actually works. We've really covered the vast majority of all the Mocha stuff that we need to worry about already. So from here on out, we can just focus on Mongoose and MongoDB. And having this test environment means that we've got a very robust playground for kind of figuring out how these technologies work. So let's focus on making an assertion inside this it block. The first thing that I want you to remember is that we're calling joe.save right here. And as we've seen, that inserts a new record into our database. And when I say inserts a record into our database, I want you to immediately think, aha, we're working with Mongo. That means that this operation right here is something that's going to take some amount of time. It is asynchronous in nature, and it takes some amount of time for us to reach out to MongoDB and make a change. So that means that we need to have some method in here, some mechanism to say, okay, like wait for the save to finish, then make an assertion, and then go on to the next test. Okay. So to do so, we're going to be making use of promises with joe.save right here. Since it takes some amount of time to save Joe, a save call will return a promise. When the promise resolves, that means, okay, Joe is now inside of our database. So to get a notification or to get kind of a callback whenever Joe has successfully been saved, we are going to add on a .then statement like so. So now inside of here, we can basically ask the question, has Joe been saved successfully? That's really the question. That's what we have to figure out. So to figure out whether or not Joe has been successfully saved to our database, we're going to rely on a little nice part of Mongoose. Okay, let's figure out what that is. The part of Mongoose that we're going to be working with is a built-in property on every single model that we'll be working with. And so remember, Joe, I'm saying model, but I'm really talking about a model instance, which Joe is. Joe is a model instance. Whenever we have created a new model and it's just sitting inside of Mocha or kind of like our Node.js workspace or sitting in memory and it hasn't been saved yet, Mongoose will automatically place a flag on the model called isNew. If the record has not been saved to our database, isNew will be equal to true. And so as you can see in this diagram right here, the idea is, okay, Joe currently only exists inside of like Mocha land or Node.js land. Joe has not yet been saved to our Mongo database. Because Joe hasn't been saved to Mongo, isNew will be equal to true. On the flip side, once Joe has been successfully saved off to Mongo, once he is in the database and saved, this isNew flag will be flipped over to false. So inside our test suite, we can make use of this isNew flag to figure out whether or not Joe has been successfully saved to our database. Inside of our test, I'm going to add in an assertion, and the goal of this assertion is going to be to just look at that isNew flag. So we'll say assert joe.isNew. So if Joe has been saved to the database, isNew will be flipped to false, and we'll be asserting false right here. So clearly we don't want to assert false. We want to make sure that we always assert a truthy value. So I'm going to say Joe not isNew. So once we have saved Joe, we want to make sure that he is not new anymore. He has been successfully saved to the database. Now the last thing we have to do is remember back just a moment ago, we were inside of our test helper file, and we said that this operation right here, clearing out our collection of users, takes some amount of time to execute. So we need to make sure that Mocha knows that we want to kind of like pause execution until everything is complete. And so that was where we brought in that done callback. We're going to use the same exact methodology in here with joe.save as well. So only after we have gotten our callback executed, this then statement, and we have made our assertion, will we say, okay, Mocha, everything's done, you can go on to the next test. So we will make reference to our done callback, and then inside of our .then, we will call done. One thing to remember is that done is available to every single it block and before each statement that we use in Mocha. We can optionally use it at any time, so we don't have to reference it, we don't have to call it, But once we do reference it in the arguments list, we have to make sure that we actually call it somewhere within our actual spec, our actual it block. All right, so let's give this a test. I'm going to save the file, and then I'm going to run our test command npm run test at the command line. And it looks like we've got a pass here. We do have a warning that we'll come back to in just a second. I do want to make sure that we test we check to make I want to make sure that we can make our spec fail as well, to make sure that we don't have an erroneous success right here. So I'm going to remove that exclamation mark. And so now we're going to be asserting something that hopefully is false, and hopefully we'll see our test fail. So I'll run npm run test again. And now this time you'll see that we get a little bit of a pause in there. And if I scroll back up, timeout of 200 milliseconds exceeded. What this means right here is basically, hey, you got to your assert statement, the assert failed, and we never actually reached the done statement, and so we see our entire spec fail right here, which is exactly the behavior that we want. So back in the assert, I'm going to add back in the exclamation to fix the test back up. I'll run it one more time just to make sure everything's good, and okay, fantastic. So now we are getting a warning in here, something about deprecation warning, mongoose something something something. Let's take a look at this error and fix it up in the next section.